It's early in the morning of 13th of June 1944. SS Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann and his troop of 5 Tiger tanks have been sent to the high ground near the Norman village of Villers-Bocage. Heavily camouflaged to prevent their position being spotted from the air, they have no idea that they are about to find themselves at the sharp end of a British advance. On spotting his enemy, Wittmann acts swiftly and decisively with devastating consequences. Within 15 minutes, he has destroyed 10 tanks, 10 half-tracks, 8 Bren carriers, 1 scout car and 1 6-pounder anti-tank gun. What on earth has just happened? The week after D-Day had seen hard fighting as the British Army pushed inland. They've encountered some of the best troops the German Army has to offer, and those troops have used the defensive advantage of the Bocage country wisely. The ultimate objective, Caen, remains in German hands, but progress is being made. A hole has opened up in the German defences at the juncture of the British and American armies. If it can be exploited, then the German forces west of Caen will be encircled. The veteran British 7th Armoured Division, the Desert Rats, are chosen to lead the advance through the gap, with the 22nd Armoured Brigade commanded by Brigadier Robert Looney Hind in the vanguard. There's only one suitable southerly road to take, and it is flanked on both sides by thick hedges and trees. It's not good tank country. The British column sets off at dawn, led by Cromwell tanks of the 4th County of London Yeomanry, and supported by the mechanised infantry of A Company, 1st Battalion Rifle Brigade. At 8:30 a.m, they reach the outskirts of Villers-Bocage and press through the town, greeted by jubilant French civilians. A German Kübelwagen is seen speeding away from the village, and in nearby fields, an 8-wheel German armoured car like this one is seen shadowing the column. But nothing is done to warn those in the column that they're being watched. At 9 a.m, A Squadron, the lead unit of 4th CLY, reaches point 213. This is the highest piece of ground in the area, about 1 kilometre to the east of the town and on the main road to Caen. It seems like the ideal place to stop, survey the ground ahead and decide what to do next. A Squadron 4th CLY form their tanks into a defensive perimeter on the hill, and back down the road, the carriers that transported the infantry are parked nose to tail at the roadside. The men disembark and post sentries. Back in the village, all the infantry officers of A Company have jumped into a pair of half-tracks and have driven up to point 213 for an operational group meeting with the A Squadron officers. All seems quiet, but the column has stopped in the worst possible place. From his camouflaged position, Wittmann is surprised by the sudden appearance of British armour to his front. They're so close, he assumes he's been spotted. His instinct is to go onto the attack with a single Tiger tank. But he hasn't been spotted at all, and he's going to catch the column of British armour completely unprepared. Moving west through the fields for several hundred yards, then turning north, he breaks through onto the road. Looking to his right, he sees the 3 rearward tanks of A Squadron, all facing in the opposite direction. He fires, his first shot destroying a Cromwell. Adjusting aim, he quickly fires again, and a Sherman Firefly goes up in flames. The disabled tank blocks the road, and the pall of acrid smoke obscures line of sight between the village and point 213. Now he turns west and advances down the road to Villers-Bocage. Here he comes across the neatly parked infantry half-tracks, with their stunned crews brewing tea by the roadside. As he passes, he destroys them one by one with machine gun fire and HE shells, as the officerless infantry quickly disperse into cover. He continues on, destroying several Royal Engineers and Rifle Brigade Bren carriers. At the end of the line are 2 6-pounder anti-tank guns. Still limbered to their Lloyd carriers and without crews to use them, they are easy prey. The ammo-carrying Lloyds explode spectacularly as he moves on towards the town.
This video has been made possible by our supporters on Patreon, our YouTube members and our Super Thanks donors. Please join them if you can and support the Tank Museum. And thanks for watching.
Just after the turn into the Tilly Road, Wittmann next encounters the 2 lead Stuart tanks of the CLY's recce troop, commanded by 19-year-old Lieutenant Rex Ingram and Sergeant Francis Ferguson. Ingram knows that his 37mm gun stands no chance of penetrating the Tiger's armour, so he bravely slews his Stuart across the road in an attempt to block Wittmann's advance. An 88mm round smashes into the side of the tank, and Lieutenant Ingram bails out and attempts to rescue his wounded driver from the front hatch. There, he is gunned down. Next, Ferguson's tank is hit, is destroyed and immediately brews up, casting a pall of smoke over the road in front of Wittmann's tank. With the Stuart tanks now out of action, Wittmann effortlessly barges Ingram's tank to the side and proceeds on into the town, destroying another half-track as he goes. On the edge of the village, Major Arthur Carr of the CLY's HQ troop senses something's afoot, having witnessed the destruction of the two Stuarts to his front. Accompanied by the Humber scout car of the regimental intelligence officer, he swings his Cromwell off the road and they take cover behind a low wall, hoping to see and hit whatever appears through the smoke in the flank. Through the smoke, 100 yards to his front, the Tiger emerges. Carr shoots twice in quick succession, scoring direct hits, but watches on hopelessly as both shells bounce harmlessly off the tank. The Tiger stops, takes aim and dispatches his tank with a single shot. As the tank burns, the crew bail out. Machine gun fire from the Tiger peppers the ground around them, destroying the scout car sitting nearby, but the crew manage to make it clear with just shrapnel injuries and burns. The RHQ Cromwell tank stopped on the road behind Carr's are those of Lieutenant John Cloudesley Thompson and Captain Pat Dyas. Sitting just in front of them is the Humber scout car of Lieutenant Charles Pierce, the RHQ liaison officer. While Wittmann is distracted by Carr off to his left, Pierce manages to turn his nimble scout car around in the road and speed off back into the town. Realising the trouble they're now in, the tank commanders order evasive manoeuvres to try and break line of sight with the Tiger. Lieutenant Cloudesley Thompson orders his driver to reverse back up the road into a garden between two houses. But the Cromwell is painfully slow in reverse with a maximum speed of about 2 miles an hour. This gives Wittmann all the time he needs to move forward, stop, take aim and fire. But miraculously he misses. The shot passes over Cloudesley Thompson's head, temporarily deafening him. In desperation, he fires his turret smoke discharges hoping to screen himself. But the Tiger is now so close, only 40 yards away, that the smoke grenades fly clean over Wittmann's tank. Whilst Cloudesley Thompson has now managed to reverse back into cover, he's been in Wittmann's line of sight the entire time. Wittmann rolls forward, traverses his turret and destroys the Cromwell at point-blank range. The tank begins to burn, but the crew escape. Cloudesley Thompson is later recorded as saying he never wanted to see another tank as long as he lived. Meanwhile, Captain Dyas has managed to reverse into a walled yard. In his eagerness to engage his previous target, Wittmann hasn't spotted him. Now in cover, Dyas decides he will let the Tiger pass, emerge and destroy it with a shot to the rear. But he has a problem. When the column had stopped, Dyas had given his gunner permission to get out of the tank to go for a pee, but he has yet to return. Ahead of him, Wittmann can now see one other Cromwell, commanded by RSM Bill Abson, and Captain McLean's medical half-track. Both are sitting just in front of a bend in the main street, which blocks further view into the town. The half-track is dispatched with ease as Abson desperately tries to reverse round the bend to his rear. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't notice a pile of logs on the pavement behind him. He reverses into them and gets stuck. Wittmann takes aim and fires, destroying his tank with a single hit. The driver and radio operator are killed, but the rest of the crew escape. Pierce's scout car is now round the corner and out of line of sight, and he almost runs into Brigadier Hines' scout car going in the opposite direction. He was going up to point 213 to chivvy the advance along. Shouting a warning to Hines' driver and to Captain John Philip Smith, the commander of the recce troop whose remaining Stuart tanks line the roadside, Pierce now continues on down the high street. Hines' scout car is quick to react, and so are the Stuarts, who are sat with engines running awaiting the order to move to the head of the column and resume the advance. They quickly disperse into side streets out of the way of the marauding Tiger. Wittmann advances in pursuit, bypassing a frustrated Dyas around the bend and into the main high street. In front of him he now sees two tanks, one Cromwell and one Sherman, commanded respectively by Captain Paddy Victory and Major Dennis Wells. Both are Royal Artillery OP tanks. The Sherman doesn't even have a main gun. It carries a wooden dummy to enable extra radio sets to be carried in the turret. To make matters worse, the Sherman's entire crew have dismounted to stretch their legs, leaving only the driver, Jock Ray, in position. Wittmann fires first at the Sherman. His first shot hits the ground in front, but the second penetrates. The tank brews up immediately, filling the street with smoke and completely obscuring his vision. Ray manages to escape through the escape hatch in the hull floor. This activity buys the second OP tank, the Cromwell, more time to escape, and it reverses back into a side road. Here its commander, Captain Paddy Victory of the Royal Horse Artillery, orders his driver to do a 180-degree neutral turn in the street to allow for a more efficient getaway. Unfortunately, as the tank slews round, it kicks up a curbstone which jams in the track and immobilises it. Victory watches as Wittmann slowly crosses the junction, initially thinking he hasn't been spotted. But then the Tiger stops and the turret slowly traverses. Victory orders his crew to bail out, and seconds later an 88mm round smashes into the side of his vehicle, knocking it out. 500 metres away, at the opposite end of the street, a Sherman Firefly, commanded by Sergeant Stan Lockwood, now has Wittmann in his sights. Lockwood, the lead tank of B Squadron, had been warned by Lieutenant Pierce that a Tiger was headed in his direction, and he had edged forwards until he could see down the high street. Luckily for him, when he first spots Wittmann, his turret is turned to shoot at Victory's Cromwell. The slow traversing speed of the Tiger turret gives Lockwood time to stop and carefully aim. He fires, but the concussion from the high-velocity 17-pounder gun throws up an enormous amount of dust in the narrow street and causes part of an adjacent shop to collapse, showering the Firefly with rubble. Lockwood can't see a thing. Nevertheless, he orders a second shot, and this time the gunner thinks he scored a hit as he sees a shower of sparks through the smoke. Wittmann returns fire but misses. His shot hits the building, causing even more of it to collapse onto Lockwood's tank. Smoke, fumes and dust now fill the air, preventing either commander from continuing the duel. Having finally confronted a tank that poses a serious threat, Wittmann decides it's time to withdraw. He reverses some way down the street, conducts a 180-degree turn and drives off down the route by which he had come. Still without his gunner, Dias orders his co-driver into the gunner's seat and seeks to execute his plan to attack the Tiger from the rear. He emerges from his position, but as he does so, he meets Wittmann's Tiger head-on. Dias knows the odds are against him, but he manages to get off a couple of rounds before a single shot from the Tiger penetrates the turret. The shot kills two of the crew immediately, and he is seriously injured as he's blasted clear out of the turret into the street. Wittmann rumbles on past the burning hulks of his previous victims. Then suddenly there's a loud crash which brings him to a halt. One of the 6-pounder anti-tank guns Wittmann had passed at the start of his rampage had survived. Its crew had returned, unlimbered it, and faced it down the road in case Wittmann returned from the same direction. 2 shots in quick succession have hit the Tiger in the track and immobilised it in the middle of the road. Wittmann has to order his crew to abandon the tank. They spray machine gun fire down the road in the direction of the anti-tank gun, bail out and make their way off down the Tilly Road. Less than 15 minutes have elapsed since Wittmann set out. He has destroyed 29 British vehicles, and the British vanguard is in chaos. This was an attention-grabbing achievement, but what was the impact? As the opening action in what would become the battle for Villers-Bocage, Wittmann's charge into the British column had caused chaos. He'd cut off A Squadron 4th CLY on point 213 and separated the senior leaders from their men, causing near panic amongst the accompanying infantry. With his ambush, Wittmann had taken maximum advantage of the situation, and it must be emphasised that this was Wittmann's idea. He had seen the opportunity and taken it. It was audacious and courageous. But it is equally true that Wittmann got lucky. He found himself at the right place at the right time where the British had halted to confer, but he didn't know that. And cutting off the CO of the regiment and the infantry leadership on point 213 was not something that he calculated on. In addition, the vehicles he encountered and destroyed were of little threat to his Tiger. He only decided to withdraw when he encountered a Firefly which could do him serious damage. And on top of all that, the conduct of the British operation was something of a gift to Wittmann. British commanders knew there was potential for serious resistance. They knew they were being shadowed, they knew Panzer was in the vicinity, and they knew that the Bocage country was well suited to ambushes, and yet they still failed to take adequate precautions. This is probably because they were being pushed hard to keep moving. They were effectively being forced to operate at a pace unsuited to the environment they were in, sacrificing solid reconnaissance in the process.
The overall battle for Villers-Bocage was not decided by Michael Wittmann. Indeed, the fighting carried on for the rest of the day. Whilst it resulted in a British tactical withdrawal, this was not due solely to Wittmann's actions. In later fighting at point 213, 11 Cromwell tanks, 2 Sherman Fireflies, 1 Cromwell OP tank, 2 scout cars, and 2 half-tracks were destroyed. This was a much more valuable and dangerous collection of British vehicles than those Wittmann had destroyed, albeit by several Tigers rather than just one.
Later that day, a German attack into Villers-Bocage lost 5 Tiger tanks and at least 4 further Panzer IVs. Viewed in isolation from the rest of the day's events, this looks like a significant British tactical victory, but that's a story for another video. The following day, the Germans would lose 20 tanks to 4 when they attempted to push the 7th Armoured Division back further and snuff out Operation Perch altogether. In this context, it's hard to call the battle a British defeat either. Wittmann was a darling of Nazi propaganda. Already a household name in Germany, propagandists credited him with all the British losses during the battle, including those destroyed on point 213. They even claimed he took part in the afternoon's battle for the town, when in fact his role was limited to providing advice for other commanders arriving on the scene.
As a result, historians are increasingly concluding that Wittmann's achievements, although remarkable, have been somewhat over-exaggerated, further boosting the mythology of his reputation as a tank ace. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and if you can, please support us on Patreon.